Dr. Kishen, can you give an introduction about yourself to our audience?
Certainly. So, I am an assistant professor in engineering design. I've been in the university since 2007. Funnily enough, I joined the department as an undergraduate in mechanical engineering. Carried on to be a PhD student in the department, specializing in carbon fiber composites. And now I am a teaching staff focusing on teaching engineering design to both undergraduate and postgraduate students. And I also supervise PhD projects.
Should students take part-time job while studying at the university?
That's a good question. Now, it all depends on what you're trying to look for a part-time job. My view, and again it's my personal view here, is that a part-time job will help you develop some skills which you wouldn't be finding in a course. For example, teamwork and skills. Yes, you have the group projects, but with a part-time job, you don't have the safety net of the university. You're out there in the big wide world doing what you would do in your role. But equally, it depends on the kind of job that you're going for. The ultimate goal for someone would be to leave the university with a holistic, all-round knowledge of their core subjects and also of their own personal development. So if you do a part-time job that would help you to further your career in a field, or whichever field that may be, then yes, definitely that will help.
How can a student decide to do a bachelor or to move forward and do his master's or even a PhD?
Very good question. The best way I would say is when a student usually goes through the course, when they reach a pathway point, they have to decide, is this the career path that they want to go for? Or do they want to become a chartered engineer? Which, if you're doing an engineering course and you want to be an engineer when you graduate, and of course that would be the answer. Then they would have to go for the MH program. Now, if you are an international student, it gets a bit trickier because the MH program is a combined master's program and it's not recognized in all countries. Like for instance, at the time when I was doing my undergraduate, the MH was recognized as an undergraduate bachelor level degree back in India instead of a master level degree, which was what drove me to do a PhD, because that's universally recognized. A PhD is a PhD. Now, the question of whether you want to stop at a BEng or go all the way to a PhD, it depends again on what you're looking for. If you want to be a specialist in a field and still gain relevant experience as you would do in industry, then a PhD is good for you. The way to think of a PhD is it's not just about academia on its own. It's not just a pathway to become a lecturer or a professor. A PhD is pretty much like what you would do as a graduate engineer in industry, except that you're doing the same work at a university. And ultimately, yes, if you want to be a professor or go into academia or be a researcher, then yes, a PhD is very much the way to go. So it all depends on that journey when you're through the university. When you reach your third year, or maybe even your second year, you'll have a good idea of, okay, do I want to be a researcher? Do I want to go into industry, doing engineering as I'm already doing? Or maybe I don't want to be an engineer anymore and I want to go to finance, in which case, then the answer is pretty clear.
What are some common mistakes students often do?
Oh, I like that question. So, the classic mistake that I've seen from my time as a student and over the years is time management. It's a tricky one because it's a perennial problem not just at university, but when you go into your professional life as well. Life is never a linear path. You never have one deadline a week or one deadline a month. There will be multiple projects going on at the same time, multiple commitments. And the key thing to do is to manage your time well. And that's a hard thing to do because when you come to the university, you are aiming for perfection. You want to get 100% everywhere. But when you do that, you can only have 24 hours per day. You only have 7 days a week. And you have to juggle your time. And it's so easy to say that, right, I like this module, I want to get 100% in this assignment because it's important. You put all your time into that, only to sacrifice something else. Could be another module, could be your health, could be your personal life. So the key is time management and knowing when to stop. Knowing when to say that, right, I've given enough effort on this, I want to now move on to the next assignment so that I get an overall a good mark. Key thing to remember is that you're in a marathon when you're at a university and it's not a race. You're going for the long run.
What does a professor or lecturer like to see from a student?
So a lecturer would like to see a student who, one, first and foremost, or the most important one, is who manages their time well and is on top of the topic. So we have no issues with a student asking us questions, because that's what we're here for. But it's the type of questions that's valuable. If it's a question that is about, okay, you explained this in X lecture, but wouldn't XYZ approach work better? That is something that we love to hear. The one that we generally struggle with is, where can I find the lecture slides? Because that you already know.
What students should aim during their studying at the university?
That is actually a very deep question. There's no right or wrong answer for this one, I'm afraid. It all depends on what you're looking for from the university experience. Like for some, the university experience is all about getting the highest degree that they can get, which is a first-class degree, and maybe going into further development in research or in industry. So in which case, if the first-class degree is the most valuable one, then studies would be it. But equally nowadays, when you go into the big wide world, into the job market, they're looking for not someone who's just academically sound, but is also someone who is an all-rounder. So someone who is strong in academics, but can also have good social and people skills so that they can fit in with an organization. And given how everything is all digital nowadays, it's also being able to have a good, solid proficiency in digital skills, and crucially, being able to be adaptable. You see, the things that you learn at the university now, by the time it's 10, 15 or 20 years into your career, may not necessarily be the same things that you're doing. You need to know exactly how to build your skills so that you yourself will become the lecturer.
Is there something that students should keep a balance in between during the university?
A balance of studies and your social life, yes, definitely. When you graduate, like I said, you need to be looking for an all-round approach. So you do need to be balancing your academics, your hobbies, your social life outside of the university. But as for how much balance, whether it's a 50-50 split or 50-30-20, it's entirely up to the person.
What kind of skills make a good student, and how can students maximize those skills?
Okay, a good student is someone who can manage your time well and is able to find information themselves, who has the skills to solve problems. And when you are keen to solve problems, you want to try and do it independently some of the time. So you need to know how to look for information and how to collate that information. Looking for information is easy enough. We do it every day in our lives, looking on Google or watching videos on YouTube. But it's what you do with that information. It's how can you find it yourself quickly. And a student should also be adaptable. Ultimately, they need to be flexible with what they do, knowing where to go, how much effort to put in, and when to stop.
Does the university teach other things than the lessons?
Yes, to a certain degree. You do have your traditional lectures, you do have seminars and group activities, so you have the academic side of things, but you also have personal tutorials. So when you come to a university, you would be assigned a personal tutor who would kind of be like your mentor, would help to guide you both academically and also as a person. You'd be learning soft skills like how to manage your time, how to prioritize work, how to make sure that you build the required skills for whichever career path that you're going for. And a tutor is also there to offer support when things become difficult for you.
What are some of the challenges and benefits students might face when moving from school to the university?
So, when you go to a university, it is not very prescribed as what you do, because by then you would be 17, 18, you're deemed to be an adult who is now let loose in the big wide world. So there is no one to hold your hand to say, right, you need to now do this assignment, here's the homework that you have to do. No, you're completely on your own, which is good and bad in a way. Because good, because that is life. You do have to develop that skill at some point, and the university is a safe environment to do that. The challenging thing is to transition from a school to a university where everything is prescribed, where you have a very set timetable, you have everything due, assignments are all very linear. When that suddenly disappears and you're let loose in your first year of your undergraduate degree, that's a big transition, and that is where the challenge is.
Would you give some key advice for success to students and young people?
My advice would be ready to try your level best, but equally be ready to accept failure. Because sometimes you learn a lot more from failing than you would learn from actually succeeding. So never be afraid to try something, whether it's a project at the university or even a hobby. But if you fail, that's fine. But the worst thing you could do is not trying at all.
Would you give some motivation to students on why they should study the university?
The biggest advantage that you have to studying at a university is that no 2 days are exactly the same. One day you may be working on a project, another day you'll have a traditional lecture, another day you might be involved in some extracurricular activities. You get this safe environment to try a lot of different things, which I don't think you can find that outside the university, in my personal view.
Are there some strategies or tricks that students can use to maximize their learning skills?
Yes, there are. The best strategy that I can think of is actually remembering that this is a marathon and not a race. So the worst thing you could do would be to do everything in the last minute just before a test or an exam. That's the one thing you shouldn't be doing. So the opposite of that would be to continuously work on a task in small sized chunks. If you have a coursework due in 2 weeks' time, why not start working on it from the day that the coursework is launched and finish it early? So working on how much time to spend on it, and then doing that would be good. Also remembering that attending a lecture and just listening to an academic on their own, you wouldn't be learning. It's a two-way street. you need to internalize what they say. You need to apply what they're teaching you, which would be doing practice problems, looking at things called textbooks, which I know is a bit outdated nowadays, but they're still there, very useful information.
Can you provide some techniques to students on assignments or courseworks?
Certainly. So for any assignment, first and foremost, the most important thing is to read the project brief or the assignment brief, and then to read it again, and then a third time. Because there's quite a lot of information in the brief, and it's not that straightforward to work out where to prioritize your efforts on. And on the topic of prioritizing your efforts, usually you will be given a marking scheme, so you'll know exactly how an assignment is going to be marked. You'll know what an academic is looking for so that you can demonstrate that you have met the learning outcomes. It's a very good idea to have a look at the marking scheme so that you know exactly where you need to prioritize your effort on, and then using your time well to focus on those areas and only those.
Can you give some advice to the audience or students from your own life or as an academic?
So, an advice that I would give from my own life, I would say that there will be change, there will be differences. No one is going to be exactly the same. No two people are alike. And as a student and as a scholar, your very important thing is to know how to get along with everyone and work with different people from different backgrounds and different experiences.
Do you prefer students to take industrial years? What are the advantages and disadvantages of doing so?
Okay, good question. My personal preference is yes to taking an industrial year, because along with your degree certificate and all the experiences that you build at the university, work experience is one of those most valuable things that you can have when you go into employment. And by having that industrial placement year, you get a lot of support from the university to find a job or a placement in this case. And it would be very valuable work experience that you can add to your CV. So when you do graduate from the university, you can hit the ground running. So yes, definitely, I would encourage that.
Taking me as an example, would you say British school in Baku gives enough knowledge to students or prepares them well to study in a prestigious university like University of Nottingham?
Well, I do remember you well when you came to the university. You were quite inquisitive. You were quite keen to learn things more than what was taught in the course. When you were stuck, you were trying to solve problems very independently and were asking the right questions at the right time. I would say yes, you were well prepared.